All right. All right. Go. Hello and welcome to Wi-Fi Optional, the weekly tech show where we talk tech so you don't have to. This is episode 23, recorded Tuesday, May 3rd, 2016. And with me is Mr. Jason Wadicott. I'm Rakshan Vajaratne. Welcome, Jason. You're running on a few hours of sleep and a couple of disconnects. This is take 3, full disclosure.
Yeah, it's been an interesting week to say the least, and sleep is at a premium at this point in time. But that's what you get for having a new baby and a new puppy all in the same weekend. So fighting through it, but very happy and very fortunate. Things have gone very well, and I know that you're coming off an interesting last weekend that you had with work and working quite a few hours.
Yeah, it was at least 10 hours a day for since I don't know when. But sometimes you gotta play hard you gotta work hard to play hard. So
yeah, cutovers don't happen on Monday through Friday either.
No, especially when you're working in the healthcare industry. You gotta those clinics don't they don't shut down during the day. So, but after a week long hiatus, we're back and we got some pretty rad news stories. Most of them are from actually this week, and we saw a lot of changes, but some of them actually were mostly updates to some of the stories we wanted to talk about last week. So let's get rolling.
On a follow-up for something we talked about in the past, but also from further in the past, an Australian entrepreneur named Craig Wright has publicly identified himself as Bitcoin creator Satoshi Nakamoto. Ending the year's speculation, Wright stepped into the spotlight following a joint investigation by the BBC, The Economist, and GQ. The news comes 6 months after the Wired and Gizmodo both identified Wright as the creator of Bitcoin. They amassed a trove of leaked emails, documents, financial records, and since deleted blog posts, painting a far more complete picture than 2014's Newsweek report, which identified a California engineer, Satoshi
We may have lost Jason, but the rest of the story is which identified California engineer Satoshi Dorian Nakamoto as the founder of Bitcoin. Nakamoto denied the reports and threatened to sue, but Wright is now taking ownership of the virtual currency. I was the main part of it, but the other people helped me, Wright said, pointing to cryptographer Hal Finney, one of the engineers who helped him turn Wright's idea into Bitcoin protocol, BBC said. Anybody that knows anything about Bitcoin, it's almost next to impossible to try and figure out the origination. It's so well masked, but reading further into the article, it says that Craig Wright was able to reproduce some of the algorithms and some of the keys that were used in the initial Bitcoin chains. So that's how they basically figured out that he is most likely the creator of Bitcoin. Not really sure why it took him this long to actually come up and say, yes, I was the one that did it, but looks like we may have a definite or somewhat definite indication of who the creator of Bitcoin actually is. And I see Jason's back. Welcome back.
Yeah, it's been a fun night of these internet troubles. But yeah, I don't know where I left off. I'm guessing you picked up where I left off, but it's just interesting to see, after you probably alluded to when the California engineer was accused back in the article, the investigation they had a few years back or months back. And Wright's name kind of came up, and I think they looped into something with the IRS, or not IRS, or whatever the IRS would be in Australia, and I think that's kind of what brought him to the light, and now it's probably proven that, not 100%, but that he's the one that completed or was the one that's behind, quote unquote, Bitcoin and the blockchain technology itself.
Yeah. Moving on, Nokia is buying digital health firm Withings for $191 million. Nokia has announced plans to acquire Withings, a French consumer electronics company focused on digital health, for 170 million euros or $191 million in cash. The acquisition will significantly boost Nokia's portfolio of wearables and fitness devices, bringing 200 Withings employees and products, including its Activite smartwatch, e-ink fitness tracker, and Bluetooth thermometer, into Nokia's advanced technologies division. In a blog post, Cedric Hutchins of Withings hailed how perfectly aligned the company goals are. Nokia vision of creating beautiful designed products that blend seamlessly into the everyday lives of real people echoes exactly the ambitions that they have. We have a solid shared ground. Uh, uh, we have a solid shared ground to build on. I think basically what happened is Nokia failed to evolve, and this is kind of their next step of stepping away from the mobile phone industry. Uh, Anybody that knows cell phones, Nokia was, they were the creme de la creme at the time. I mean, those virtually indestructible phones, and they were actually worked really good. They had fantastic radios in them. But the touch screens, the color screens, and the smartphones kicked in, and Nokia wanted to follow the same footprint that they've always followed, and they failed to innovate a little bit. And next thing you know, the Microsoft came and bought a chunk of it, and now they're stepping into the smart device industry, the fitness smart device industry.
Yeah, it's just it's one of those things where if you almost like you can't beat them, join them. If you can't develop your way into the future, just buy your way into the future, and that's kind
Right.
of what they're doing here. And but it's a really interesting company. I know I personally haven't really dug deep into them, but I through past articles and things that popped up, I know that their scale, which can like tweet and do a bunch of other stuff, it's kind of interesting and get body thought calculations and stuff like that. But I know that's really a popular thing. So I'm hoping that maybe, like you said, the Nokia that we both know from the past, that was the giant in the phone industry, can kind of get its way back in with the fitness industry here. So we'll see what happens. Third article, we're back to our ransomware from a few weeks back.
This is
Um,
not gonna.
no, it's never going to end. It's just going to keep switching, like the story alludes to. But back when we last talked about it, I believe it was a hospital in Arizona that was hacked, and it went a very long time before they paid the ransom and got their files back. But this time, we are looking at police departments being in the targets of these ransomware hackers. But cyber criminals who have forced U.S. hospitals, as I alluded to, schools and cities to pay hundreds of millions in blackmail to see their computer files destroyed are now targeting unlikely group of victims, local police departments. Eastern European hackers are hitting law enforcement agencies nationwide with so-called ransomware viruses that seize control of computer system files and then encrypts them. The hackers then hold the files hostage. The victims cannot speak tonight. Don't pay ransom online with an untraceable digital currency known as bitcoins, which we just talked to in our first article. They try to maximize panic with the element of real life hostage crises, including ransom notes and countdown clocks. Um, Getting more and more into this, it's just interesting. Like they said in the last article, it's one of those things where if you don't hit it by a certain time, then it goes up to more and more and more. But eventually, I think a lot of these cases, what happens is, with the hospital case, there was too. They kind of negotiated them down to a certain fee that they thought would be, that they could pay or whatever, and they end up paying it. But it's still just an interesting way to go about it. Instead of deleting things and being malicious, let's hold on to them and blackmail people. I mean, it's a great, I shouldn't say great, but it's a very lucrative way to do it. But I don't see this stopping anytime sooner. And maybe this just comes down to us not being prepared when it comes to updates and things like that. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and that's kind of actually what you alluded to is actually the scary part. This is just version one of these ransomware attacks. How are these guys going to evolve, and what's version two of these ransomware is going to be? Back up your information. Get an image of your computer, so if anything were to happen, just dump your existing image and load a new one. And another thing that I see, and maybe this is just my way of thinking. I think these guys are targeting places like police departments and hospitals that are just massive. They're not going after, you know, onesie twosie organizations. For one, they must understand that the IT base, because of how big they are, the IT infrastructure is so widespread that uh, you know, for anything to kind of propagate through the system, it takes a while. So you know, and they can take advantage of that, and also going after things like government entities. They know that they have to work with budgets, and it's like, oh hey,
Exactly.
and you know, the government entities, they're unfortunately are not the one of the first organizations to be on the cutting edge of security and innovation. You know, they
Which
have
seems
to,
backwards.
right, exactly. So they actually know who to target, and they're actually doing a pretty good job, as strange as it may sound, of getting their point across. But you know, there's I was part of a talk the other day, or I was listening through a talk, and they were talking about the human firewall, and you know, that's going to be the what they envision is going to be the next level of security, where you're going to have a hardware firewall, a software firewall, and now you have a human firewall where you have to, you know, update, as in, you know, keep them abreast, educate them, hey, here's how the ransomware, here's how everything is changing, here's how you need to be aware. Because 99.9% of the time, I shouldn't say 99%, a majority of the time, these ransomwares actually come into the system because of some user that inadvertently opened an email that said, hey, you've won something, or what is this attachment, and they accidentally opened an attachment, infects the entire system. So you know, that's where the human firewall component comes in, where you're going to educate the user, saying don't open anything. If there's, you know, if it's ever in doubt, um, you know, stop opening them. Hopefully they'll come up with some kind of a sandboxing solution where all the attachments will open sandbox, and if it's a malicious attachment, you can just kill it right there, and it doesn't infect the system. But it's certainly going to be interesting. But related to that, on the next article, Opera browser, they are launching their own free VPN. Opera last week announced that it would add a free VPN service to the latest version of its browser. Now, you don't have to download VPN extensions or pay for VPN subscriptions to access blocked websites and to shield your browsing when on public Wi-Fi, says Christian Colundra, Opera Senior Vice President of Engineering and New Products. Until now, most VPN services and proxy servers have been limited and based on a paid subscription, he added. With the free unlimited native VPN that works out of the box and doesn't require any subscription, Opera wants to make VPNs available to everyone. Opera's VPN contains a number of features found in commercial grade VPNs. Hiding an IP address, Opera will replace users' IP address with a virtual IP address, unblocking firewalls and websites, protecting sessions at public Wi-Fi hotspots. I like this idea. I know, Jason, you use a VPN. I use a VPN all the time, but I'm I'm with the mindset that you get what you pay for when it comes to something like a VPN, and that's great that these guys are bundling it. But I have a little bit of reservation using it. However, given the opportunity, I'd rather use this than no VPN if I'm at, you know, a Starbucks or a Caribou coffee shop.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. It's only as good as the exit nodes, and having an open source thing like this, it, who knows who is running one of these exit nodes and just scraping data, you know, and that's half the issue. But it does completely make sense for Opera to do this. You know, back to the Opera Mini days and things that we saw back on the flip phones, their main thing was they did a lot of compression algorithms, you know, cloud wise before cloud was even a term. So having a service where, you know, they're already running this data through that, why not run it through a VPN? It completely makes sense. But I am completely on board with what you said, and you know, it's only as good as you know. There's a lot of things in this life that are good deals, but a lot of things are as good as you pay for them, or as much as they cost. And I don't think security is one of those things you really want to go go open source or free on, because it you just don't know what you're actually getting.
Right. And the other thing that is one of the key things with these VPNs is, you know, are you tracking the the data? Not necessarily the data. Are you tracking the activity? Are you tracking, okay, this person connected on this date and went to these websites? And then what if there's a subpoena that gets sent to Opera? Are they going to release this information? A lot of the VPNs that are out there, one of their key things, one of the key selling points is we don't keep track of any logs. So in the event they get a subpoena or something like that, they're like, we don't have any logs. But um, are is that going to be the case? Or but I know somebody is going to dig through their terms and conditions, and we'll find out here soon. But yeah, like you said, it's great that they're doing it, but you, you got to take it with a grain of sand.
Exactly. We'll see what happens. Going to a completely lighter note, to our Internet of Things talk that's been a constant understream here the last couple of weeks. But if you dig gardening, it's often months-long guessing game. Plant seeds, water them, make sure they get the right amount of sunshine, and then just maybe you'll sprout some greenery that will survive until harvest time. But why do all that work of an uncertain payoff? This is 2016, and in 2016, everyone puts chips in things. Several sensor-laden products can monitor your soil and pass that information to an app on your phone. Irrigation systems can use weather forecasts to hone watering schedules, and most of these devices connect to the internet, so you can do this. So you can dote on your green friends from dote. Interesting terminology there. And I like that. From anywhere. The Eden's Garden sensor is one example. Jab the spike-shaped solar-powered sensor into the ground, and it reads the soil conditions, light frequency, moisture levels, weather data, and sends it to the Eden app on your phone. Parrot's flower power sensor goes in a potted plant or in the ground. Like the Eden, provides data on the plant's health, like temperature and whether it needs to be watered or fertilized. It uses a battery, which makes it for a better bet for indoor plants. So this is just kind of the thing where we've seen this in the last 2 years. Internet connected fridges and all these things that you really don't need, but do make life easier. And I think just as an understream of all this, I think this is all great ideas, and I think this is going to come to fruition at something like really important in our lives at some point in time. But I don't know if telling me how wet my soil is really the place for it.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I can see this being somewhat of a more realistic application, kind of like a greenhouse environment. You have a large number of plants, and now you can, in one shot figure out what's going on. Because, I know they use drones for, they'll fly them over farmlands to get images or get weather conditions, and I can see something like this being uh, kind of a neat app to figure out what's going on. But if for your personal little 12 by 12 garden, it might be a tad bit overkill. But like you said, this is the time where people are putting everything in chips. And a couple of days ago, I was watching TV, and now they have a Bluetooth enabled pregnancy kit. So it's like, okay, so
Ovulation kit.
I'm not too certain, but it's another one of those things where, well, we did it because we can. There's really
Exactly.
no, you don't need it, but we can do it, so we did it type thing. But it's actually something very cool that if you have a garden and you want to try it, absolutely. But like you said, with all the the Internet of Things is very, very young at this stage. There's a lot of problems with security, and the problem is you have one faulty or not very secure internet appliance, and if somebody can get in, they've basically just got into your entire network. So if you want to run something like that, at least get a cheap $20-$30 router, second router, and run it off of a whole different network, so it's kind of separated from your own.
And the problem is, let alone getting into all your stuff. At one point in time, one of these things is going to get hacked, and it's going to be kind of the scarlet letter on all this stuff, where it's going to ruin it. And that's the hard part is you get all these people making these innovative things and doing all this crazy stuff, but you get worried that they rush to getting the product out and getting their idea made, that they actually don't worry about security, and
Right.
and it ruins, like I said, it kind of puts a bad taste in people's mouths going forward.
Yeah. And with that, we're going to roll into our main article, which is about Apple, Google, and cars. BMW, Daimler steer clear of Apple car project is the first half of the story. BMW and Daimler have broken off talks um, about forming a partnership with Apple to develop an electric car, according to news reports published last week. Discussions reportedly stalled over issues that included which company would take the lead on the project and which would have ownership of the data. Apple apparently sought to develop a vehicle that would be integrated closely with its cloud-based software, while the car makers had concerns over customer data protection. Apple had sought German technology and specialists for electric and autonomous car project, and its ongoing efforts to find key strategic partners have been conducted out of its Berlin office. So I have a feeling that the the iPhone case that was going on had something to do with this.
And that's my first thought when I read the article too. Is the way they made it sound. It's like, you know what, you guys are kind of getting dug into by the government. I don't think we want to get into a pool with you guys right at this point in time and get ourselves in that whole mess. So we'll just stay over here and see wait what happens. But I know I feel exactly the same way because it seems to me, somebody like BMW or Daimler or somebody like that or would be the company that would pair with Apple. Somebody that not just a low brand Kia or something like that, because that wouldn't fit Apple's branding and Apple's image and things. So this would make sense. So I think it has to be something, outside of the realm of, we don't want to do and something more of, hey, you guys are you guys got the heat on you right now. We'll stay on the sidelines for now.
Yeah, but it looks like Apple's already got into talks with a company called Magna. Magna makes pretty much a slew of items, anything from the security locking mechanism to circuit boards to safety equipment for vehicles. So there is, I guess, still a possibility that Apple might be involved in some of these automobiles. Whether or not it's going to be branded Apple, I don't know. Whether Magna is going to use Apple's the IT infrastructure and technology and then rebrand it. I'm not sure at this point, but looks like they are working with this company.
Well, it seems like part sourcing, kind of like they do with Foxconn and things. Have somebody else make
Right.
it for them, or because they use Samsung parts in their phone, they use everything. So it would make sense that if you can't get somebody just to give you or make you a stock car and stick your brains into it, that the next step would be, hey, let's just source all the parts and have somebody put it together for us. I think that's kind of what they're looking with the Magna company, and like that, I think that's a harder way to go about it. But if no one wants to get in bed with them, I think that's the only route they have to go. And that's more of Apple's game, to be in control and to have a say over
Right.
everything. So it would make sense that they would do it themselves. So I guess we'll see what happens with the Apple car, which has been spoken of very, very much lately. But the second article we loop in. We can kind of talk about both here, but Google is now looking at getting into the minivan market for their self-driving cars. After months of rumors, including one rumor that it was partnering with Ford, Google's self-driving car is going to be going into manufacturing mode with a new prototype based on the Chrysler Pacifica minivan, which I know you are very familiar with.
That hits home.
That's saying
I owned the older model, which is actually still classified as a sport
SUV.
utility vehicle.
Yes. It's
Yep.
a van. Don't worry, Rock. You can
Sport
admit it.
utility vehicle.
But the decision to go with this kind of vehicle emphasizes the goal that has always been behind Google. And I can't scroll right now because the screen hates me. There we go.
It's awfully interesting that we're on a Google topic,
and they're not letting us talk about this. Yes.
Yep, and we're using Google Sheets, and it won't let us scroll.
But anyways, it's behind Google's self-driving project. It will allow unprecedented independence for people who are blind, deaf, and disabled. A minivan can easily be adapted for wheelchairs and other assistive devices that will help people get in and out of the vehicle. And it totally makes sense. If you're going to make a car, you're not going to make a sports car. You're not going to make a monster truck. You're going to make something that every single person can drive, and you don't want to limit these people with disabilities or with impediments that can't make them drive a tiny sports car, get up into a giant truck or anything like that. So it just makes sense for them to use a minivan. Sorry to rub it in again, but a minivan model.
And that's exactly the thing. And I can see them kind of spinning this the self-driving autonomous vehicle around a little bit and saying, hey, if you are in a wheelchair but you have a modified minivan, like as you called it, they can actually have that person still drive, but then take advantage of the autonomous driving capability. So it could be like a 50-50 thing. This person is still going to drive, but if for some reason the system notices that there's something and they're veering off course or whatever it is, they can automatically correct it or something along those lines. And I can see them doing that, and it totally makes sense. And I think it's a good move that they're doing that. And like you said, sure, they might have a sports car, but that's not very practical to have a car that can go 200 miles an hour drive itself.
Exactly. And the first thought about this when I saw the helping people that are disabled or deaf or blind in this case, the only thing, I first thought, oh, this is great. Somebody's blind, they could, get into their car, could drive them where they got to go, and they got to go somewhere, don't need anybody to give them assistance. But then I thought, hey, wait, isn't one of like the laws or one of the things that the people are trying to put in place with these self-driving cars is that the individual still has to have like immediate access to take control of these things. So can you really ethically and legally have a blind person be riding in or let's even say blind, let's say disabled, where they're, paraplegic or something like that, or quadriplegic, and they can't, function in the car? It'd be a great thing to have them be able to chauffeur them around, but can they legally drive that since they can't really take control of the car if need be?
That's a good question. I guess I don't really know the answer, but I do know that Uber is actually very interested in this, and they want to, at any point in time when they can, launch a fleet of self-driving Uber vehicles. So I
You have
guess
to
that
tip. You have
applies
to
to.
tip the self-driving
Yes,
cars
yeah.
too.
So I wonder how that applies even in that case. So you call for an Uber and this just car with no driver pulls up and you hop in it. So are you, as the Uber customer, um, supposed to take control if something happens? I don't know.
I picture like a Max Headroom, like old CRT
Yes.
monitor mounted in there.
Yep.
I am here to bring you. Are you John?
Oh man, Max Headroom.
That'd be great. But no, I completely agree. I don't know. Yeah. So is there like a joystick in the back, or like a trainer car where they got the steering wheel beside you, or what happens? Is that going to be a cheaper fare for these people since they're not actually having an individual drive them, or is it less because you don't have to deal with small talk? I don't know. I don't know how they would
I
really
don't
go
know.
about that, but it should be interesting. The self-driving car thing we're at the very, very tip of all this happening, but I mean it's going to be definitely within our very short term of our lifetime, here, that we're going to see this be a very common thing, and sooner than later. And I, it's just really interesting how fast it's come in the last, from their self-driving, street view cars to now we're actually having physical cars that are going to be produced to do this without a special function, just to be a car. So it's interesting to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still excited by the summon function on the Teslas. You push a button and the thing comes out of the garage, and
Well,
but
that's the thing is what they say. The greatest part about that summon function is it's not so much like it's going to be a valet for you at the when you're eating that sizzler or something, but just people that have really tight garages, or people that that kind of thing where it's really hard to get it out of, where you have a little bit of room, like this thing can like maneuver out for you and do that, and that's so cool. But it just makes me wonder, going back to our Apple story, Google's doing all this stuff self-driving. Apple's kind of hinted at it, but more just about their internal head unit things, since they're sourcing all these parts just for cars, are they trying to go down the self-driving part too as well? Because they have a big catch-up game to play on Google if that's the case.
Years ago, when this whole when Google initially said, "Hey, we're coming out with a self-driving car," and then there was brouhaha on Apple's side. I always thought that Apple and Tesla would shake hands and go, "Hey, you know what?" Because Apple would need an entire facility to build these things. They would need an R&D team to design the car, to build it, and so I always thought that Tesla is kind of a polished model that Apple would fit nicely in, and they would go, okay, let's shake hands. Tesla, you build a car. We as Apple will give you the interface, and then we'll kind of meet in the middle. But that certainly didn't go that way. So I'm lucky nobody put money on my idea. But
And Tesla already has an iPad-sized display in their Model
right,
S's right now as it is. So
right,
I guess
exactly.
it would be a good fit. And like you said, the we've said this in the past. I know I can't remember what episode it was, but the how the two companies work and kind of their mantras is very, very much the same. It's all about the experience. It's all about the experience.
Yep.
And so they're very, very, very much the same company. So it is really interesting that they haven't really gotten together. I don't know if that's a headstrong side from Apple, and not wanting to give control over to somebody like Tesla, or if that's Tesla being like, yeah, you know what, I think we'll be just fine on our own. We're growing fast enough as it is. So, but it would be knock it out the park, complete sense for them to do it together, but they just haven't yet.
Well, the plans are out on public domain. So if Apple's looking
Just
to
GeoHot can hook you up and just make
well,
one for you.
his kit's coming out. 10 grand should be out the end of the year, I think. So
Oh goodness, yeah, I've done enough hacking with 3D printer and making little things on it that that's not going to kill anybody. It might burn the house down. We're not going to kill anybody. I don't know how I want to really solder in a brain into my car, but I guess that's for certain types.
yeah, it kind of takes you back to when you had 2 subs and 3 amplifiers, and you had a second battery in the trunk, and
It wasn't driving the car.
Right. That's what we're going back to. Is we're not going to need another battery to run the the Intel server that's in the back that's running the navigation and the avionics of the car.
While it's playing Go against
right.
Asian guy. Oh goodness.
Well, that's our show for today. I think we're at about a little over 30 minutes. So thank you very much to Purple Planet for providing the music for our show. Check them out, purple-planet.com. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. It should be right down here. And find us on your favorite podcast app. If you can't find us, rss.wifioptional.com is our feed address. The audio version also available on iTunes. And if you have a question, comment, or if you want to join us on a live taping, send us an email to info@wifioptional.com. You can find us on Twitter as well at Wi-Fi Optional. And that's the wrong song.
Dive.
Yep. And from myself, Rukshan, and Jason, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.
Have a good one.